To discuss all of this, joined from Nashville by former Assistant US Attorney Alex Little. Hello to you. Thank you for joining us on Sky News this afternoon here in London. Okay, how important is this job?
It's probably the most important job in the U.S. government. It has the same standing as the president in many respects because it is the head of a branch of government. But unlike the president, the individuals who serve as justices serve for unlimited terms. And so they will take that position for the rest of their life if they so choose.
And they are someone, whoever is chosen, will know at 1 o'clock in the morning here in London, 8 o'clock where you are, very much reflecting President Trump's views. And we've just outlined some of the characters that we're talking about. They're all very conservative.
All three of them are very conservative. They're also white men. I think that is something that will get some attention because the diversity of the Supreme Court has never really reflected in recent times the diversity of the country. I think that is troubling to a number of American citizens, how few women are on the court, how few minorities, and his pick is not expected to change that at all.
What impact will a new person joining, and why is there that gap there, first of all, and what impact will the new person, whoever it might be of those that we've listed, have on the makeup of the Supreme Court?
Sure, there's really two questions. One is, why is there a vacancy at all? And that's, I think, probably the most contentious and controversial issue with respect to this nomination. Is the reason that President Trump is able to make a nomination right now is because when Justice Scalia died last year, the Republicans in the Senate did everything they could to block the nomination of Judge Garland, who had been nominated by President Obama for many, many months in an unprecedented fashion. And it was a spot that I think many Democrats believe was stolen from them. The justice should have been picked by President Obama, who was in the White House at that time. So that's the first issue, is there's a vacancy solely because of Republican obstruction. The second question is, what sort of effect will he have? Depends on the sort of cases the Supreme Court hears. I think that is a very difficult question to answer in two respects. One, because if it's one of the justices who is younger, who could be on the court for 30 years, we don't know what the controversies are going to be in 30 years and how this justice might rule on them. And two, people do change over time. There are a number of cases in American history of justices who came on the court very conservative and became more liberal over time. So I think it's difficult to see long-term what the effect will be. Short-term, there will certainly be more possibility of 5-4 decisions about matters that are going to help the Republicans, or at least the Republican Party is more interested in than the Democrats.
Alex, they're going to be queuing up, aren't they, for changes in the law to all sorts of things that have been in place for decades, not least that 1970s Abortion Act that we commented on. Sure. If that's overturned, does that mean abortion would be illegal throughout the United States?
No. I mean, there's two things I think to know about that. There are a number of justices on the court now who I think personally believe that that decision, Roe v. Wade, that made abortion legal throughout the United States, was wrongly decided. I don't know that those same justices, however, would be so willing to throw out decades of court precedent about that. So I don't think it's at all a foregone conclusion that that is going to happen. I think it could happen, but what that means under the American federal system is that some states that decided to outlaw abortion could do that, and other states choose to keep it legal would do that, but there'd be no federal standard. The reason there's a federal standard is because the Supreme Court decided 30 years ago that it was a constitutional right for a woman to have access to an abortion. And because the decision was decided nationally based on the U.S. federal Constitution, it applied to all states. But taking away that federal right would still give each state the opportunity to decide. And you would have, unfortunately, a patchwork where women, particularly poor and vulnerable women in some states, would not have access to an abortion, and other women in other states would be able to.
And Alex, while we have you, just let's talk about this controversial immigration situation, should we?
Sure.
90 days at the moment. We know that the president wants to make it into law as soon as possible. That would also come up in front of these Supreme Federal Court judges?
Not necessarily. What he's done is not enact a law, but he has said, my policy is X. We're going to block these refugees at the border. We're not going to allow people in from these listed countries. And he can do that in some respects under his executive power. What's happened now is that's been challenged as unconstitutional in a number of courts. And the initial court decisions seem to indicate that it is unconstitutional, that it does violate different provisions of U.S. law. And so as those court cases continue, it could end up before the Supreme Court. That would likely not happen until the end of the year. But it's certainly going to be contested and is being contested in courts across the country.
Okay, Alex, good to talk to you. Thank you for your expertise. We appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Other news, thousands